Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another Talmix broadcast. It's great to have you with us. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. We run these broadcasts every month, and they're really intended to enable all our consultants and anyone who views, in fact, to develop themselves as independent workers and to perhaps learn some tips and tricks about becoming a better consultant through the Talmix platform specifically, and also largely to introduce you to topics that are relevant within your industry and within your line of work. So my name is Katie Roberts. I work very closely with the Talmix team, as you may have seen me before. And today I'm joined by two fantastic consultants, fellow consultants. And our session today is all about giving you tips and techniques about becoming more successful at winning opportunities through the Talmix platform. So this event, just as a reminder, is being recorded, which means it will be available on our YouTube channel afterwards. So if you want to watch it again, or if you want to share it with some of your contacts, please feel free to do so. And if you want to engage with us and talk with us, just follow us on Twitter and send us any comments or questions that you may have to We Are Talmix on Twitter as well. So I'm going to introduce the panel today, but I won't do a lot of the talking. I'm going to have each of them introduce themselves. So Frank Mizuno from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, he joins us late at night. Frank, thank you very much for staying up. Wonder if you just give us 30 seconds, just tell us a little bit more about you and what you do and where you come from.
Sure, Katie. Yeah, my name is Frank Mizuno. I live in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I've been out here about 20 years now. I'm originally from America, from California. I do mostly strategy consulting across industries, although I did most of my work early on in heavy industry, steel, cement, things like that, and more recently in financial services. I've had a time at Bain & Company and at Booz Allen Hamilton.
Wonderful.
Is my consulting background.
Great, thanks very much. And we've also got Peter Galasco is on the panel with us today. Peter is based just outside of London. Peter, introduce yourself.
Sure. Yes, I'm Peter Galasco. I'm a freelance strategy and marketing consultant. I've been working on my own now for about 6 years. I specialize in M&A and growth acceleration projects, especially for private equity firms and their portfolio companies. And prior to that, I've got largely a line management background in consumer products with people like Gillette and Diageo, and then latterly in B2B services with Experian and Equifax.
Wonderful. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, both of you, for joining us today. So, as I mentioned, we're here to tell you, and well, it's more the chaps that are on the panel with me to tell you a little bit more about their own personal experiences and to discuss some things that may help you, give you a little bit of a competitive edge, especially when it comes to proposing and submitting proposals through the Talmix platform and how to handle client interviews, etc. So, Peter, I want to just start with you. You're quite a relatively new consultant with the Talmix platform. And as someone who typically has worked in both the traditional pitching environment as well as this new online way of working, how have you found this new way of sourcing business as an independent consultant?
I found it's great. I think the two approaches really complement each other very well, the Talmix platform and traditional business development. The number one challenge that I'm sure most freelancers find, and certainly I find the same thing, is how do you minimize the gaps between those projects? And it's a classic problem that when you're hard at work on the project, you don't have time to look for that next project. And then when you finish the project and you've started to concentrate on business development, then it takes a lot longer to reel in those prospects than you thought. Traditional freelance, I think, business development is predominantly what I would call outbound. So nothing much happens until you either pick up the phone or you sit in front of your laptop and you start reaching out to hopefully warm leads, and perhaps some of those which are slightly less warm. With Talmix, I think the great thing is that a lot of the effort is done for you and you're getting it inbound. So coming straight into your inbox are some great leads where someone's serious, they're prepared to spend some money. And so it's an excellent help, I think, to traditional methods of business development.
Wonderful. And Frank, do you agree? What has been your experience?
I agree. I think that the two go hand in hand together. I'm doing a little my own traditional business development as well as the Talmix side. And it's nice to have the two complement each other and to be able to go from one to the other.
So stay with you for a second, Frank. So let's talk about sourcing the right projects for you. What have you done specifically to ensure that you find the right projects relative to your skills and according to what you're looking for?
I do review the project list regularly, every couple of weeks. And I think the alerts are also very good. Most of the projects I've proposed on have been through alerts. And so I think that system works very well, and they're good to relevant projects to propose.
And Peter, and anything to add to this? I mean, what has been instrumental in ensuring you keep yourself updated on new opportunities?
Yeah, a particular challenge I have, as I mentioned in my intro, is that I work in two very distinct industry sectors. And obviously they might be after different things. So what I find, just as we've said before, is not just to rely on the alerts, they're great, but also every week or two, have a look at the long list as well, just to see if there's something that you might have missed. The other thing I find is the filtering of the labels, which of course you can do to make sure that you get the most relevant ones, is terrific. But sometimes they're not always foolproof. So I'd see myself as, for example, working in M&A right across the piece, but actually if a client specifically talking about commercial due diligence or deal origination, you might not even actually use that M&A tag. So it's definitely worth reviewing what the keywords are and looking back at the long list of projects as well as the alerts.
So largely, I mean, it has to do with the way you set up your profile really determines the notifications you're going to receive, what projects seem of interest to you or might be relevant to you. It's all boils back to having a really sufficient profile and strong enough profile that is able to tag you. Yeah. So Peter, staying with you for a second. So assuming now that you've identified an opportunity and it comes to preparing a proposal, and you think, okay, this is the project I'd like. Now I want to kind of prepare how I'm going to pitch myself. What are the key things that you look for, perhaps in a brief or in a project itself, that determine how you approach submitting a proposal for that project?
Yeah, good. I think the first thing, it's the classic, but it's still super important, is really understanding what the client problem is. And sort of in the same way as hopefully your proposal will be sort of every word is worth its position there. Most clients, not all, but most clients have put a decent amount of thought into that proposal, so it's worth reading it very, very carefully. And if need be, get some more clarification and background and do your research around it. I think once you've got that, it's then a matter of highlighting how you can add value to specifically meet their needs. Case studies in particular, I think, are super important. So that's something that's really important to look at, because I think you need to demonstrate nowadays, I think, to be successful, there's probably 3 buckets you need to demonstrate thought in to be able to meet it. One is obviously having that functional expertise, whether it's HR, marketing, or strategy. The second one is in terms of the industry expertise, that you can actually say that you work specifically in their sector. And the third one is perhaps a catch-all, which is sort of personal type thing. So it's around fit and chemistry, which you may not initially know, but you get a sense of that. Plus, obviously, some of the more sort of basic things in terms of location and also fee levels. So all those sorts of things are important. And I think in the past, you sometimes were able to win if you tick 2.5 out of 3. Now you really do, I think, have to tick all 3 boxes. So those are the sorts of things that I'd be looking for to make sure I weave into the proposal.
And Frank, what about you? Anything that you would add to that? How would you approach submitting a proposal?
No, I think roughly the same, but I think in this part of the world, geography is certainly more and more important, right? Having the familiarity with certain countries and industries in countries in order to support your proposal.
Beautiful. I mean, that you touch on a very, very relevant point. And I think in future, we're going to be doing some broadcasts that are very specific or situated very specifically around geographical location and what the importance is of having local regional knowledge in order to grow business, both regional as well as international. So when it comes to submitting your proposal, Frank, what have you found worked for you that determined successful selection by the client?
Well, I'm always looking for keywords. Right, like Peter mentioned, functional keywords. What's the project really about? Also showing the relevant expertise in the function in the industry, and again in the geography that the client mentions. One thing I'm always sensitive to is language also, because being an English speaker, I don't have the broad set of language skills, but a lot of the project out here requires specific language skills. And so you need to watch out for that.
Yeah. So what do you do when a project appears perfect for you, but you may not have the language skills required to deliver? Do you make a plan, or do you choose?
Yeah, I mean, basically, the only ways to deal with it are to see if it's optional, right? If you can work around it, or see if you can partner with somebody who does have language skills.
Beautiful, and I suppose that's where the importance of a network comes in. I hear it so often from fellow consultants, having a strong network that's able to support that. That's beautiful. So,
Exactly.
So Peter, I want to just chat with you for a second. When looking at proposals in general, what is your advice when it comes to making yourself stand out from the crowd?
Right, well, I think there are two things that I'd say on that. First of all, it's to really understand what your USP is. So what's your elevator pitch? And I think actually that's where the Talmix platform can work really well, because it actually does force you to not only talk about your keywords, but also have an intro statement there, which hopefully has been thought through. And to make sure that how your USP can then match what it is that the client's after. So for me, for example, although I've been a freelance for 6 years, and I have also worked for 4 years with a large consulting firm, the PA Consulting Group, a lot of my career actually has been in line management roles at VP director level. So part of my USP is actually being able to say to people, look, I understand the client problem you have there, because I've been on your side of the table, and now I can bring my consulting skills and that combination to bear to actually help you with this. So everyone's got to find out what that USP is and make sure you play it to stand out from all the other good people that'll be applying.
Absolutely.
And I think the second thing is around ongoing communication. I think occasionally, people spend quite a bit of time putting their proposal together. They press send and think, wow, that's great. Let's see what happens. I'm glad that's out there. And there's a little bit of a fire and forget type mentality. But as we all know, people are busy, clients are busy. And so it's absolutely fine, I think, to try and nudge them along on that. And it's trying to get that right balance, obviously, in terms of show that you're hungry for it, but at the same time, obviously, don't stalk them. So you've got to give them a little bit of time, but sending reminders every 5 days or so is a good plan.
It's that fine line, isn't it? Staying at the top of someone's mind without being a cause of annoyance. Frank, I want to switch to you for a second. So you've as a consultant, you've identified an opportunity, you've submitted your proposal, and now the conversation starts. So naturally, there's always more information that a client wants to know about the person behind the proposal. What is your advice when it comes to negotiations of project objectives and deliverables? And do you have any specific interview techniques that you could potentially share from your experience of in Talmix, with Talmix?
No, I mean, the interviews I've had have always been very open and honest and very straightforward. So no specifics on that. I think it's important to have a good discussion, like in any interview, life, and also, and highlight your relevant expertise, so you can really show how you can contribute to the specific project. And I think, like Peter mentioned, case studies are a great example of that in telling your story.
I suppose you touch on something. It's that transparency element. I think once you set your transparency from the start, your communication is so much clearer. All through the project, all through selection, the client knows exactly what you are able to deliver. You know what the client wants, and it makes for such a better relationship. Peter, anything to add to that? Do you have any techniques that have worked for you that you could share?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few good questions I think that you can ask, and I think it's important to ask the questions as well before you dive into the pitch. That's the other thing. It's listen first, talk second. I think in particular, it's understanding exactly what does success look like for that client, and what are the key challenges for them that they are looking to overcome, and then obviously marry that with what it is you can bring. I mean, a couple of other things that I find is to try and understand what the client's operating style is as well. So as consultants, we work with a lot of different styles. You can sometimes jump to a conclusion that if it's a new client, they're going to be just like that other job that I did, especially as it's so similar. But, for example, are they hands-on or hands-off? How collaborative are they? They want to know every little update on a daily basis, or are they happy just to wait for sort of set piece presentations? The other thing I find at sort of the interview type stage is don't be shy to provide an initial thoughts on it or a hypothesis to their problem, just to demonstrate you've got an understanding. And often, even if you're not necessarily on the right track, it'll spark additional conversation, which I think is good. And then the last thing I find is, where possible, is to reflect the jargon of the company. So every industry has its own jargon, which if you're a specialist in that area, you'll know. But even though, what one company's strat plan is another company's strategic playbook, one company's NPD program is another one's innovation pipeline. Use the terminology that they use, because it shows that you are listening, and also it shows that you can fit in with their guys quickly.
That's a great tip, actually. I wanted to just pause on the operational. You meant how did you refer to it? The way that they operate.
Yeah, their operating style.
That's it. How do you determine that from a couple of interviews? Do you just have to develop your sixth sense in what they say and how they act? Are there certain leading questions that you ask to be able to determine that kind of thing? What do you generally do to get a feel for the way that they operate?
Yeah, I mean, if it's a new client, obviously that's always tricky. You have to go by, what you've seen, which is sometimes quite modest. So you'll have to brief, and then hopefully either face-to-face or over the phone, you have to sort of pretty quickly size up what you think the individual's like and what they need. You can always do a little bit of background homework. You might also be able to talk to other people that, use your LinkedIn profile perhaps to try and see who else might know what that company's like. But also, ultimately, I think it's asking them up front. Say, look, this is the sort of style, last time I did a similar project, it was very collaborative. We had half-day workshops and we brought in a whole team of 8 or so. Is that the way that you're looking to work? And you'll soon get some feedback where some might say, oh, no, we can't possibly do that. People have got to do their day jobs and this is confidential. We just want it kept at a core of 3 or 4, or yeah, that's exactly how we'd like to work. So a combination of a bit of homework and actually asking directly.
Absolutely. So if we move on to a little bit, so the project is now underway, Peter, and I'll stay with you, and then Frank, I'll come to you for your advice on this as well. But the project is now underway, everything is going well, you're actually, things are developing beautifully, and then the dreaded scope creep starts to show rear its ugly head, as a lot of my development counterparts may call it. Things may not necessarily things that have not necessarily been included in the original brief or agreement, but start to become issues that might result in a extension of the deadline, extension of the budget, etc., which normally happens with projects, which very often happens with projects. How do you handle things like that when those things start to take place in projects that you work on?
Yeah, I mean, that is a tough one. It does happen quite a bit. And ultimately, it's a judgment call. So, in fact, something like this happened on a recent project of mine where, we were looking to do an internal evaluation. And I said up front in the proposal, very specifically, we'll look to talk to, 6 of your directors, senior managers, and then write that up as part of a reflection of what the internal management team on that piece thing. When the list came through from the CEO, there were 11 people there, so virtually double the number of interviews, and obviously more effort to actually write up. Now, in this particular case, I was at the beginning of the project. It was a new client. It was a sensible thing to do. So I actually thought, and I had the time to do it, because ultimately it was perhaps an extra half a day or a day. So I actually went along and I did that without raising that as something, hey, you need to pay for an extra day. However, I made it quite clear in a polite way to the client that this is, it goes a bit further beyond the call, but very happy to do it for you on this occasion. And I think the key there, of course, is ultimately, as the consultant, what you really want to do is delight the client, not just meet their minimum expectations. So if this is a way that for an extra half day you can do that, then I think that's pretty good. Now, that said, if there's something that's a significant piece of work, and I can remember on another project, there was a case, for example, where for external analysis, the client was saying, don't worry about you doing that. We've done some voice of customer recent market research. We'll provide you with those reports, and I'm sure that'll give you the color. So we started the project, had a look at the 2 market research reports, and guess what? They were out of date, and they really didn't cover the product. And in that particular case, it was a matter of saying, look, there's a gap here. So I pulled together, if you like, a new piece of work, saying, look, here's another extra 4 or 5 days. I can do this research for you, and I recommend you do. But it's your choice. The option is that we just make a group judgment as to go forward. Which way would you like to go? So you treat it like a mini proposal if it's a significant piece.
I think many occasions the client may not necessarily be aware of the amount of work involved. So asking for something additional that they think might be trivial or small, they don't realize. So it's also just managing their expectation as to the amount of work that would be involved. Frank, how would you handle a situation like that? Similarly, or is there anything?
Well, I think like Peter says, it always comes down to a judgment call, right? At some point you have to draw a line. But I think very, very importantly, you have to develop the rapport and the relationship with the client up front, which I find is increasingly hard as a lot of the projects I'm involved in are run remotely. And so the team really doesn't get together with the client physically, except for 1 or 2 meetings during the whole case of the project. And that makes it more difficult to build a relationship that you want, where you can really have those discussions with the client.
Sure, that's
all those lines.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if you've developed a strong relationship at the start, then the rest of the relationship is easier in terms of communicating more freely.
Exactly. Yeah. But if you're only talking, by phone and through emails, it's very, very difficult to have that relationship.
Absolutely. So what would you say, or what are some things that consultants should not do when it comes to finding new opportunities? What in your experience or that you've seen, what should consultants not do in the way that they seek opportunity? It's always difficult when you say, what should you not be doing, right?
Yeah. I mean, our red lines of what you would not do are, number 1, don't embarrass the client.
Yeah.
And number 2, don't make people specific calls unless you have to, right? So don't criticize or critique people unless you have to.
Right. And Peter,
try to avoid those.
Yeah. And Peter, what about you when it comes to what should consultants not do when seeking new opportunities and working with new clients?
Well, I mean, kind of flipping that, but building on what Frank just said, I think it's making the client look good is a key thing. And also, I think understanding what perhaps some of the individual managers or directors' agendas are, as well as the organization one. And not just perhaps assuming at face value what you're seeing, but it's about people at the end of the day. And
absolutely,
as Frank says. And
internal stakeholders and internal functional targets and objectives as well. That's a very, very relevant point. Absolutely. So, Peter, just staying with you before we go to final thoughts. I see we've got 10 minutes left. Peter, we know that in many cases, one project obviously soon leads to another, which is wonderful, which is what independent consultants enjoy. And you may be involved in the upsell of a project. So in those situations, what is your advice on how you as a consultant handle that within the Talmix framework, really?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, I think it's great to look out for upsell opportunities. And I think those people that have had some training in a large consultancy will be very attuned to that. So it's important as well to stay attuned to that if it's on a Talmix project as well. Because often there's a lot of emphasis on new clients. It seems to be the exciting thing. And sometimes people forget about what's under their nose in terms of current clients or recent ones. So that's the first thing to say. It should be a lot easier to upsell and on-sell than starting from scratch. I think the critical thing really is within the Talmix environment is just to make sure that everyone is kept in the loop. So whoever your contact is at Talmix, to bring them up to speed in terms of what that opportunity might be. And I'm sure they'd be very supportive in terms of going forward and seeing how that potential opportunity can actually be converted to a new project.
And I wanted to actually, you raise a good point. Something that I wanted to chip in with early on in the discussion. Obviously, every project has a Talmix representative, and that initial homework of finding out about the project, of preparing yourself for a proposal. Part of the actions is obviously using that Talmix representative to ask questions and to help you through the process and to give you some insight that they might have of the client that could help you in creating a proposal. And so that relationship also with the Talmix team helps you in terms of additional project development, additional project opportunity. So as we come to the end of the broadcast, Frank, I wanted to just give you a quick opportunity to share any final thoughts, any final tips that you would give to a consultant considering the Talmix process or just pitching in general. Any final thoughts?
No, so far, my experience with Talmix has been very positive. And I find Talmix is very supportive across the whole life of the project and the whole billing cycle and everything else. So I find that very good, and rewarding. I think if anything, perhaps I haven't pushed hard enough at things like the sell-ons and the upsells for projects I've been on so far. And I have to keep more of an eye out for that. I think there's more opportunity that I haven't been taking advantage of.
Great. From the horse's mouth. That's wonderful. Excellent. Peter, final thoughts from you?
Yeah, I've got two things come to mind, unrelated, but hopefully both relevant. I think one, going back to that discussion we had around proposal stage, I think it's super important to make sure that the proposals come across as being genuinely bespoke. So behind the scenes, you might want to cut and paste what you've got, but make sure it does not look cut and paste when it goes in front of the client. I think that's one really important thing. So you need someone, perhaps a third party if possible, to take a fresh look before you press that send button on the proposal to make sure that it looks as if it's meeting exactly their needs and makes sense as well. And then the second thing, in terms of the Talmix platform, as we've just said before, yeah, I think it's a great tool for freelancers. Very positive about it. And also the thing that I like is the community around Talmix. So they've had a number of events here in London, for example, where I've been along to, met the Talmix team, met fellow freelancers, and that's been a great opportunity. So I'd sort of highly recommend people doing that if at all they can.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thanks, Peter, for that. It's interesting. You mentioned, it just reminds me of a conversation I had with another Talmix consultant recently, where one of her clients gave her a testimonial and said that this particular consultant demonstrated her hands-on value and proved that she could do so much more than simply creating aesthetically pleasing presentations, which was so beautiful, because I think sometimes we're really good at presenting ourselves so well, and it's not often that a client sees that, recognizes that, yes, they know what they're talking about, but they actually deliver results. And I think that's where Talmix consultants really show their worth. In, so many that I've spoken to say they are hands-on, they walk the journey with a client, they get stuck in, they do what needs to do, and they're results-driven, which has been obvious in both of your, your thoughts that you've shared with us today. So I just want to thank both of you so much for being part of this presentation today and this broadcast. I really, really appreciate it. There's nothing better than hearing from someone who has done it and is doing it and has been successful at it. So thank you both very much for joining. One final thing before we close. I just want to remind all our viewers, there have been so many. Thank you so much. If you've just joined us, wonderful. Thank you very much. Just a reminder that we have some great resources available on the Talmix website to help you. If you have a look at the website itself, there's various pages that help you. But also, if you scroll to the footer of the Talmix website and click on the resources tab, there's a whole new world of articles and news and guides and webinars, just like this one, that are available for you to use and to watch, and learn more about how Talmix works. But also, once you have signed up and you're a member of the community, there are internal resources as well that help you through the process, that explains how things work, that explains what to do next, explains when to invoice. So make sure you do spend some time and read those resources and acquaint yourself with that. And if there's anything that you don't know or that you're still unsure about, then just get in touch with the Talmix team, and we'd be more than happy to help you and answer any questions you have. There's also a great article on our website all about how to write a winning proposal. So I will, at the end of this video, I'll make sure that the link is put into the description of the video so that you can click on that and have a look at that. But again, thank you to everybody who's joined us today. As I said, we run these monthly, so we will be running one in March again, and we're going to be doing a great broadcast all about our partners and how you can benefit from the partnerships that Talmix have developed. And if you want to see this video again, obviously it will be recorded on YouTube, or it will be available on YouTube, so you can rewatch it as many times as you like. But there's nothing more for me to do other than thank Peter, thanks Frank again, once again, and thank everybody for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in March. Have a wonderful evening. See you soon. Bye.